Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the ultimate fall and autumn reading guide. I'm going to split this video up into categories because I feel like there's lots of different kinds of books that can be considered autumn reading. So the first category is going to be like straight up horror books, and then the second one is going to be more just spooky vibes slash maybe dark academia, autumnal vibes. So it's less about the content and more about how the book feels and looks. And then the third category is going to be books that are on my TBR. So I haven't read them yet, so I can't fully recommend them, but they're books that I think will be perfect for me to read this fall. I'm going to get straight into it because there's over 25 books here and that is a lot. Starting off with the horror books, and the first category is vampires, because you can't have a horror book recommendation video without some vampires. Starting off with the ultimate vampire book is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a classic vampire book. I know it's not the first or the original, but it's one of the most prominent ones, and I actually have just finished this book and I really loved it. As I said, this is a classic horror and it follows lots of different characters, and it's also an epistolary novel, I think that's how it's pronounced, where the story is written through diary entries, journals, letters, and documents. But we start off following Jonathan, who's kind of a real estate agent, and he goes to Transylvania to visit the mysterious Count Dracula in his manor because Count Dracula wants to buy a property in London. But when he gets here, he realised things are a bit creepier than he initially thought, and Count Dracula is very, very weird, and he also can fly and doesn't have a reflection. So yeah, things don't go very well for Jonathan, and Dracula ends up moving to London and causing a lot of chaos to everyone that Jonathan knows over there. I was expecting this book to be really, really wordy because it's a classic, but I actually found that this is one of the easiest classics to read. It does drag on a bit in the middle, but overall I did really enjoy this, and I do understand how it's been so influential over a lot of vampire media over the years. Next on the list is A Dowry of Blood, which is quite similar to Dracula, except if we follow almost a different perspective. We follow one of the victims of Dracula, Constantana. We follow her from before she encounters Dracula to her life, as she has to basically follow him around as he gains more and more victims, and she might team up with a couple more of the victims to get their revenge. I loved this book so much when it came out. It got a lot of love when it was first released, and I totally get that, and it's so well written. For a vampire book on a bit more of the romance side, there's Vampires of El Norte, and this book is set in the 1840s in Mexico, and it follows the two main characters, Nena and Nestor. And Nena is the victim of some sort of horrific attack, which may or may not have been by a vampire. And Nestor flees the scene, and then the book skips to 9 years in the future when Nestor thinks that Nena died during that attack when actually she did survive. And there's kind of this miscommunication element where she thinks Nestor abandoned her, and Nestor thinks that she died in that moment. So there's that little bit of miscommunication, which I actually love as a trope. This book is definitely more romance heavy than it is horror, but I do like how the vampires in this were a metaphor for American colonizers, and I just feel that's a really creative way to use the vampire trope. Another vampire book is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and this follows the main character Patricia, who is pretty bored in her life. She is a housewife and her husband doesn't really have much time for her, and the only way she seeks entertainment is through her book club, which she goes to with a bunch of other women in her neighborhood. And one day this mysterious man shows up and kind of like brings excitement back into her life, but at the same time a lot of children at the other end of town are disappearing, and her and her book club members think that he might have something to do with it, so they team up together to investigate what is going on. I really enjoyed this book. It is a bit slow to begin with, but I just love this author's writing, and yeah, I was really captivated while I was reading this book. And the most recent vampire book I've read is Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. This is a sapphic vampire book that is told in three different timelines. One is in the 1500s, one is in the Victorian era, and one is in modern day. And we follow three women who, for some reason or another, get turned into vampires, and how all these stories kind of connect over time. I just really enjoyed this. It's very slow. It's more of a character driven book, so if you prefer plot focused books, maybe this one isn't for you. But if you really like strong characters and beautiful writing, I would definitely recommend this one. Now onto the second category of horror books that I love, and that is cannibalism books, which I know is strange to say I love, but for some reason these stories just really grip me. I cannot talk about cannibalistic horror and not mention The Lamb, which is one of my favourite books of this year so far. This book is amazing. This is a literary horror. It's very, very unsettling, and it follows the main character, who is about, I think she's 11 years old in this book. And it basically follows her and her mother as they take in what her mother calls as strays. Basically, anyone who appears on their doorstep and they don't seem like they have a place to belong in, both physically and also metaphorically. And the mother usually takes them in, like entertains them, keeps them well fed, and then kills and eats them and gets her daughter to participate in this. And yeah, this book was really, really unsettling, but I thought it was beautifully written. I don't know how the author managed to make cannibalism seem beautiful in a way. And I am just obsessed with this book. I loved the ending and I couldn't put it down. I had such a great reading experience with this, so I highly recommend this one. If it sounds like something you'd be interested in, it's definitely not for everyone. Another book in this category is The Starving Saints, which is a medieval horror, and it's set in this castle that is under siege. It's basically on lockdown. The castle grounds is surrounded by the enemies and they're basically being held hostage, and it's very claustrophobic because a lot of people are residing in this castle, from like the local town, farmers, just local people, knights, and royalty as well. They're all crammed into this castle and they're slowly running out of resources. And it follows three main characters. One of them is a former knight, the other one is a servant girl out for revenge, and the other one is a former nun who has just performed a miracle by being able to turn their dirty water into drinkable water. And now the prince or the king wants her to perform another miracle where she basically turns air into food so she can feed everyone. But she isn't really sure how she's going to resolve that. And since everyone is starving, some people might turn to drastic measures. I really enjoyed this book. It definitely reads like a fever dream. So if books with kind of unexplained plots or endings aren't for you, then this might not be the book you should pick up. But I really, really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I thought the writing was beautiful and perfectly reflected the kind of atmosphere that this book was trying to convey. It's creepy, it's unsettling. You can feel like the claustrophobia coming off of the page. I just love this book. And finally is the book Earthlings. This is a very, very weird book. I wouldn't straight up call it horror, but some of the things that happen in it are pretty horrific. This follows the main character who all her life she has felt different from everyone else. She actually convinced herself that she was some sort of alien species and was waiting for her spaceship to come and pick her up. And yeah, basically throughout her childhood, she only really related to one of her cousins, and that was it. She felt very different from everyone else. And then in the present day, she's in this marriage and she's kind of just like pretending things are normal, but yet things kind of take a turn after there. And yeah, this book was absolutely insane. I definitely wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but if you're into like really weird things, then you might like this. Definitely look up the trigger warnings because this book can get quite crazy. Now I'm just going to go on to general horror books. These don't necessarily have a theme or a common link, but they're just really good horror books. First is The Hacienda. This is the same author as The Vampires of El Norte, and it follows the main character who agrees to this marriage basically to escape her uncle and her aunt who are not treating her well. And her new husband lives in this manor where things may or may not be haunted. She keeps having these really weird dreams, and her chest of silks is all of a sudden covered in blood out of nowhere. And the residents of the house also seem like they're keeping secrets from her. So she teams up with one of the priests in the local village to basically figure out what is going on with this house. I really enjoyed this book. It's kind of a classic haunted house story, but I just love this author's writing, and there's always a little bit of romance in there as well, which I do enjoy. Next is Slowfoot, and this follows an Englishwoman who's married off to a man in Connecticut in the 1600s, and she basically goes to this very, very secluded, religious, strict town that she isn't really used to these kind of values and norms, so she's instantly shunned by the village. And things get worse when her husband mysteriously dies in the forest, and her husband's brother is kind of threatening her to take over her land, and she basically teams up with whatever is residing in the woods to get her revenge. I really loved this book. I thought it was very creepy and unsettling. It also has some images throughout it of all the different creatures that we encounter, which really just adds to the reading experience. And I loved especially the last 100 pages where the main character really takes her revenge on everyone. Next on the list is My Best Friend's Exorcism, and the title basically sums up the book very well. It's actually set in the 80s, and you definitely get those 80s vibes throughout the book, and also on the cover, which looks like an old VHS tape, which I love. But it follows these group of girls. One night they decide to go skinny dipping, and one of them disappears for a little while, and none of them know what's going on. But she comes back and looks and seems fine. But then over the next few days, things start to change, and she starts to act really weird. And the only person who seems to really care is the main character. No one else is like listening to her. The girl's parents aren't really believing what the main character is saying. So she basically has to figure out how to save her friend on her own. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought the horror elements were really good. It's actually more gross and also a bit funny as well than scary, but it is unsettling. And yeah, it was one of my favorite like possession books that I've read. One of my favorite horror authors is Junji Ito, and he actually does manga horror books, and they're usually like short story collections. So these are my two of my favorites, Shiver and Smashed. They have about 12 short stories each, and yeah, I just love him for his artwork. It's really creepy and unsettling, but also just distinct and unique. Like unique to him. I just really like his stories. I do prefer his art to his writing, but overall, I do think they are worth the read, and these are two of my favourites of his books. I literally own so many, but yeah, these two stand out the most to me. Next on the list is Bunny, and this is a literary horror, and it follows Samantha, and she kind of feels a bit of an outsider in her like small university program. A lot of it is very cliquey, and one group of girls in particular, they call themselves the Bunnies, and they're really mysterious. They kind of just walk around referring to each other as Bunny. And one day they let the main character into their group, and she kind of gets sucked into their crazy life where they um, run these kind of clubs where they act really strange and they might do some weird things to rabbits. That's as detailed as I'll get because I feel like this is a book you should go into quite blind. But I actually really enjoyed this. I read it like 5 years ago, but it still sticks out to me as one of the best literary horrors that I've read. Next is a modern classic, Beloved by Toni Morrison. And I actually read this for a dissertation that I had to do for my high school English class, and it still sticks to me as like one of the best books I've ever read. It's set in the 1800s in America just as slavery is coming to an end, and it follows one family in particular who are being haunted by the spirit of the mother's dead baby, Beloved. It's definitely very dark, and it kind of mixes horror with some more like realistic, horrific things that happen in life, like paranormal and the horrors of slavery. I just remember the writing being really beautiful and really moving, and I also really like the side characters. I definitely need to give this one a reread because I think I might enjoy it even more now at 22 than I did when I read it at 16. Okay, next are the group of books that are just more spooky vibes or just autumnal dark academia, but less scary. First is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and this follows a newly married couple, and the wife Indigo is very secretive. One of the things she told her husband just before they got married was that he could never ask her about her past. But one day she finds out that her aunt has actually died, and she has to go back to her aunt's house, and a lot of her past resurfaces. The husband finds out some strange things about her childhood and a girl that she used to be friends with, and it follows two timelines. One is the present day and one is the two girls in her aunt's childhood home. I thought the writing in this was very beautiful. I also really enjoyed the plot twist. I was just very suspensed throughout this book, and I really need to give this one a reread as well because I feel like it's perfect for October, November time. The next book is Small Favours, and this is a YA mystery thriller and horror book, and it follows the main character who lives in this very secluded small town that's surrounded by this forest, and no one really leaves this town except from to get some supplies. And actually a group of people go missing in one of the supply runs in the woods, and then mysterious things start to happen as well. There's always been rumours and folklore that there's monsters that live in the woods, but no one really was for sure that that was true, but it's kind of looking like that might be true after all. And yeah, tensions start to run high in the town, and people start to turn against each other. There's a lot of like sabotage and revenge. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. It's very unsettling and perfect for October time. The next book is The Life Cycle of a Moth, which is a literary fiction, but it's also extremely unsettling. It follows this mother-daughter duo, kind of like The Lamb, except from this time they're not cannibals. They're just mother and daughter. But one weird thing about them is the daughter has never seen another living human being other than her mother. basically she kind of scares her daughter from the world. She calls everyone basically who's an outsider rotters, and if she comes into contact with them, they will make her rot as well. So the daughter is very cautious. She doesn't really step outside of the perimeter of the house. And the story follows two different perspectives. One is present day, and we follow daughter as she kind of discovers what the real world is like. And we also follow the mother when she was younger and how she kind of came to be in this position. This book is just very unsettling. It's very isolated. You can kind of feel how claustrophobic it is, kind of like The Lamb, where you just feel trapped in their story and you can feel how trapped the characters feel as well. I overall really enjoy this. It's very nature based, very like rot girl autumn vibes. I really recommend this one. I would also recommend Life Ceremony, which is by the same author as Earthlings, except from this one is a short story collection, and this author is just writes the strangest stories. It follows just a bunch of different odd stories. One is about this husband who is unsettled by the fact that his wife likes to shop in this furniture store where the furniture is made from parts of people. And one of the other stories is a bunch of schoolgirls who keep this man as their pet. It's just very, very odd, but I really enjoyed this. I think the stories are really unique and funky, and yeah, I don't normally enjoy short story collections, but yeah, something about this one I really enjoyed. The next few books are books on my TBR that are either horror books or just spooky vibes, and I'm really excited to get to them in the next month or two. First is Lost Gods, and this is by the same author as Slewfoot, and this is a horror book where a man has to journey into hell to save his wife. This is, I think, Brom's most popular book, or the one that people like the most, so I'm really looking forward to this. It is a chunky book, and the font is tiny, and it takes up, like, the majority of the page, so I don't know if I'm going to read it this month, but maybe when I have more time I will pick this up because it sounds something like I would really enjoy. Stepping away from the horror for a minute, I actually have an autumnal romance book. I actually don't know what it's about. I picked it up because it's by Hannah Bonham Young, and she wrote one of my favourite romances of all time, Out on a Limb, and I don't normally like romances. I struggle with them, to be honest, but I loved that book so much, so I had to pick this one up, and also just the autumnal vibes that it's giving off just seem perfect. And also it's really short, so I feel like I could read it this month, and also has very autumnal leaf sprayed edges, which I love, and I'm so excited to get to this one. I also want to read The Resurrectionist. This is historical fiction, horror, fantasy, and it's set in Edinburgh and it follows this surgeon. It's also in the Victorian era. And yeah, basically, this surgeon befriends someone mysterious in the graveyard who may or may not be digging up bodies. And the surgeon may or may not be practicing his skills on the bodies. That's all I know so far, but it sounds really, really good. I also have Buffalo Hunter Hunter, which is a story about the woman who is trying to figure out what to write her master thesis on, and she stumbles across her grandfather's old journal entries from 1912. They kind of uncover secrets about an incident that has gone unreported for a while, or at least it's not been reported correctly, and these journal entries are revealing the truth, and it may or may not have something to do with vampires. I also really want to get to The Possession of Alba Diaz. This is by the same authors, Vampires of El Norte and The Hacienda, and since I love her writing, I'm sure I'll like this one too. It's set in 1765 in Mexico, as the main character marries into this family who own this mine, which is rumoured to be haunted, and she may or may not get possessed while in the mine. And yeah, that just sounds really good. It's one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so I definitely want to get to this month. And the last book on the list is definitely not scary, but very, very autumnal and cozy, and that is Rewitched, which follows the main character who is a witch, but because she's not been using her powers are kind of being revoked, and she has to kind of prove to this council why she should get her powers back. And this edition is just so cozy looking. It's got these sprayed edges on it with a cat, and it just looks so cute. So I really want to get to this one this year as well. But yeah, that is all the books. I tried to go as fast as I can so this video wasn't like an hour long. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, and let me know what books you would add to the list as well, because I'm always looking for more recommendations because this is my favourite type of book to read. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.